Thank you, Jenny. Everybody can hear me okay? Linda, can you hear me okay back there? All right. Well, thank you so much for attending today. This is a part. Today's lecture will be kind of in two parts. I want to cover the principles and the campaign of the Start by Believing philosophy up front in recognition of sexual assault, April being Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and to call attention to a display that's in our library. If you were to walk into our library and go to the left, there's a series of artworks on the wall there that were created by art students in connection with the Administration of Justice Studies students to capture the impact of what victims of sexual assault trauma may experience. These students, artists, they studied the Start by Believing philosophy first, and then they created their works of art based on what they saw in that campaign. So it's a very powerful exhibit, and I appreciate the library putting those on display for us. So just to acknowledge that some of what we'll talk about on the front end may trigger emotions, especially for those of us that may have somebody in our life that suffered from sexual violence, or we ourselves maybe had an incident where we were victimized. So if you need to step out, please feel free to do so. But it's information we have to talk about. We can't ignore these principles and things like that. A little bit about my background on this front end. My police career was, I started in 1978, and I know what you're all thinking. That young man started, and I was the first 12-year-old to be a police officer in the state of Arizona. And but anyway, since about the mid-90s, I've been actively involved in addressing issues of violence against women, including serving as the board president for End Violence Against Women International. I was the governor's commission to prevent violence against women's chair for 10 years, from 2003 to 2013, when I had the opportunity to come up to Prescott. So anyway, that's my background, and this has just been super important to me on the Start by Believing campaign, which was developed by End Violence Against Women International about 10 years ago. Thanks, Jenny. There is a PowerPoint that goes along with this. So, all right, so how the concept of believing kind of caught my attention. You know, what is it about our need to be believed? And where does that come from? And when I saw the significance of it with the victimization in sexual assault and domestic violence, it really gave me pause about how powerful it actually is. That's the website for the Start by Believing philosophy and campaign. If you were to go to that website, you would see a tremendous amount of research and information that went into the building of that campaign. It was actually spearheaded by a retired Sergeant, Joanne Archambault, from the San Diego Police Department. She ran the sexual assault unit for the San Diego Police Department, and they investigated over 1,000 sexual assaults a year. What she saw was how the victims of sexual assault were treated within the system. And so when she retired, she founded End Violence Against Women International and the Start by Believing movement, because she saw the need for victims to be believed on the front end of these investigations. And then April, of course, being Sexual Assault Awareness Month. One of the things on our campus here at Yavapai, Dr. Ryan has each year signed a proclamation declaring Yavapai College to be a Start by Believing campus. So hopefully that message resonates across our campuses and centers, that if you're victimized and you report, you will be met with respect and support and belief, which we'll see here in a minute. The research says that is so important. It's amazing how certain beliefs can impact our lives about what we believe about ourselves, and that can be positive, or in the case of sexual assault, it can be very negative. A victim that believes they were at fault in some way, self-blame, that can cause tremendous emotional damage to these individuals. This is about a 5-minute video here. All right, I love it when the music changes from the first part to the second part. And it makes me think of, it goes from dark to light, from disbelief to belief. And when you think about the power of that shift, you can feel it. It's tangible. It evokes our thoughts. Our thoughts then impact our feelings and our emotions. What we'll talk about over these next few slides covers a lot of that. Real quickly, if I can ask you guys to participate in something. Jenny, would you pass one of these out to 11 people? And what I would ask you to do is, when I signal to you, read what is on the card you've been given. Oh my gosh, we had one for everybody? Okay, Jenny, will you? Okay, very good. Okay, I am going to read this card, and then each of you respond to me. I was sexually assaulted, and I really need your help.
Hospital nurse. Hospital nurse. We should probably do a pregnancy test, since you didn't even ask him to wear a condom.
I was sexually assaulted, and I really need your help.
If you weren't planning on being cooperative with law enforcement and you don't want the medical exam, why did you report it?
What was your role, Mike?
Oh, systems-based advocate.
Okay, thank you. I was sexually assaulted, and I really need your help.
Victim's father. What did you expect going out dressed like that? My daughter should know better than to go out asking for it.
I was sexually assaulted and really need your help.
The judge said, "What have you learned from this experience, and what are you going to do differently to avoid getting into this mess again?"
I was sexually assaulted, and I really need your help.
Law enforcement, I find it hard to believe you don't remember specific details of your alleged assault. Things aren't adding up.
I was sexually assaulted, and I really need your help.
The prosecutor says, since you waited too long to get the rape kit, I don't have anything to go off of.
I was sexually assaulted, and I really need your help.
Community-based advocate. Even if you report it to the cops, they probably aren't going to do anything. It will be re-victimization, and that won't help your healing.
I was sexually assaulted, and I really need your help.
Victim's pastor. Everybody sins. You need to continue to pray, read from scripture, and let's work on your ability to forgive.
I was sexually assaulted and really need your help.
Victim's friend. Are you sure it really happened like that? He's such a good guy. We've been friends with him forever.
I was sexually assaulted, and I really need your help.
Forensic nurse examiner. How am I supposed to gather important evidence if you're not willing to complete the entire exam? This isn't going to help you in court.
This is what our victims face on a regular basis in our society when they try to disclose a sexual assault. Now, if you were that victim reporting, what would you be feeling right now? Say again, please. Helpless. Yeah, the very system we think is in place to serve that victim's needs, by your responses, thank you for participating in that, you've turned it around on that victim. And so now when we start thinking about the idea of belief, what is that victim now believing about herself? And I say her because statistically, this is a gendered crime. Statistically, over 90% of victims are women and girls. So what is she now believing about herself? Worthless. Yeah, in a horrible way. She's now seeing herself as damaged goods, but she's seeing that the system doesn't believe her, that the system doubts what happened, that somehow this is her fault, that she's to blame. She did something wrong. And with that belief coming into her core, she will look for ways to medicate, to heal. And we see victims all the time that fall into a spiral downhill of alcohol and drug abuse to self-medicate. And in the worst case scenarios, we have seen many victims of sexual assault who were treated this way by the system go on to commit suicide. They end their life. They can no longer bear the pain of what they have endured. But it focuses on what do they believe about themselves. There's a case out of Denver, another case out of Denver. This young lady, Marie, her case was finally, she received justice 3 years later, but 3 years of hell she went through to get there. There was another victim in Denver who the prosecutors believed her. They took the case to court, and the jury acquitted the individual charged with the sexual assault. But the victim in that case said, justice for me was because the prosecutor believed me. And so she could still feel a sense of justice being served, even though they lost the case in court. And I thought to myself, wow, the power of being believed was so strong for her that it served the interest of justice after she had suffered such a violent crime. And sexual assault is the #1 violent crime in America today that goes unreported. I have 13 grandchildren. My son has 7 of those. He hasn't figured out what's causing it yet. But I always want, if any of my grandchildren were to come to me and say, I've been raped, I have to be ready to respond. I have to be ready not to be grandpa and like, what the hell were you doing out so late? I've got 2 granddaughters living with us right now, 24 and 21. They like to go out. And as a grandpa, they just stay in their room, right? Because we know where they're at. So the impact of negative reactions, if the reaction is negative, then these are the other factors that may come into that person's life. Post-traumatic stress, a delayed recovery, impact on their physical health. And this is all over and above the actual trauma of the sexual assault itself, the humiliation, the physical injury that may come with a violent sexual assault. So there are benefits, though, to support, both informal and formal support. Research documents that the benefits of formal support from physicians, therapists, nurses, and from law enforcement. And when they get the support from one source, it actually kind of opens the door where the victim may feel, okay, I can also access this support. So when they get a good response from law enforcement, now I'm ready to go to the hospital and take the forensic exam. And the forensic exams in these cases are very intrusive, but they're so very necessary in the investigation and bringing suspects of sexual assault to trial. The benefits from family and friends include things like just emotional support, being listened to. One of the research documents talks about how detectives interview rape victims, and on average, a rape victim in the research project, so they were interrupted from telling their stories every 3 minutes. Well, in a traumatic event like sexual assault, your memory is not coded correctly anyway. So you're not able to tell that story from A to Z because of the impact of the trauma on memory coding. But when the detective interrupts them, it sets them back. And then all of a sudden the detective now, and we'll talk about self-fulfilling prophecy in a minute, the detective are now beginning to look at this victim like, right, it really happened, right? All right, but information, resources, help with tangible things like, can I drive you to the hospital? Can I watch your children while you go for the interview? Those kind of support mechanisms are so significant for a victim's recovery. Survivors contacted an average of 2 to 3 informal or formal supports before reporting to law enforcement. Rape victims don't get sexually assaulted and immediately call the police. Doesn't happen. They may confide in a friend, family member first, and the response they get there may well dictate if they take that next step and report to law enforcement. It is fraught with risk for victims. All right, let's move on now to some other concepts about the whole idea of believing. There's a book called The Secret, and part of today's talk, a big part of today's talk is based on some books that I've come across. One is called The Secret. Has anybody had the opportunity to see that? And then there's one called The Magic of Believing by Claude Bristol, and The Biology of Belief. I encourage you guys, if you haven't had a chance to look at those, if you get a chance to do so, think about them. But it's the concept of, what do you see yourself to be? How do you see yourself? And there's a quote that says, "The me that I see is the me that I'll be." And that was why it was so damaging to rape victims. When they saw themselves as damaged good, that's who they became. That's followed the belief, the mindset. Dr. Denis Waitley, who wrote the book, The Seeds of Greatness, he was involved in helping the Apollo astronauts visualize the mission before the actual mission. They lived the mission of the Apollo spacecraft in their minds, in their thoughts, before they ever got into the spacecraft. He then took that principle, and that's how they trained Olympic athletes, the 80s and 90s, where they would run the event that they were about to participate in through their mind. They lived it in their thoughts and in their heart before they ever participated in that activity. And they did it very, very successfully. When you think about the brain activity involved in that, how many of you have ever had a dream? Right? Okay, where does that activity come from? And dreams can be bizarre, right? And I love my dog Harley. You're going to get to see Harley here in a little bit. But he'll be laying there, and all of a sudden, he'll start chasing that rabbit while he's asleep. But you know he's chasing the rabbit because, man, his legs are just a-going. Brain activity moving through to muscular activity. What is going on in the thought process and in the dream process is impacting the physical body. There's another book to take a look at. It's called The Amen Solution. Dr. Daniel Amen, and the work that he's done on the connection between mental and brain health, mental health and brain health. They have done tremendous research into the impact of brain injuries and how that changes how the frequency of your brain matter actually works. And it was actually encouraging to me when we were talking about things like neuroplasticity, where you can actually impact the neutron pathways in your brain by positive experiences. Because for those that are addicted, and the addiction from the substance begins to change those pathways, neuroplasticity and positivity and visualization actually can help them in their recovery if they can see and believe that they're free from that addiction. It's not just a matter of willpower. They can actually begin to rewire and have a different core belief about who they are, who they have become, and where they're going with their future. It allows them to regain control of their thoughts. And again, some of this from The Secret. One of the main things I love about The Secret is it talks about the simplicity of the law of attraction. Where in the law of attraction, in the expansion of the universe, our brains, our thoughts actually emit a frequency. And within that frequency, you send it out, and whatever frequency you attach to is what's drawn back to you in the universe. Now, for those of you that maybe haven't read this may sound like it's kind of out there, but it's a great read. And so her concept is, and the experts in the book, we're responsible for asking, what do we want out of life? And then when we ask and we focus our dominant thoughts on that ask, we decide at that time we've received. And then we accept and believe that it's ours. Now, a lot of people call it faith. Believing in something you don't have in your hands tangible that you've accepted that you have. Faith, believing. You send out that wave, that frequency into the universe, and the law of attraction begins to send it back to you with what you've asked for, what you've said you receive, and now you believe it's yours. And according to the experts in this book, it works on any topic. It also works in the negative. If you are a negative-oriented person and you throw out there, the law of attraction will work in that way as well. You wake up in the morning and it's like, oh shit, this is going to be a bad day. Oops. Sorry, Jenny. Oh darn, this is going to be a bad day. You set the tone for the day. You set the tone for the day. You are your own magnet, attracting what is out there in the universe for you. And that's why it's so important that each of us has to see ourselves, visualize ourselves as capable, as successful, as beautiful, as someone that can be loved and give love, and be positive in the way we approach our lives. Buddha lived a long time ago, 400 something BC to 500 something BC. One of his quotes is, "Nothing can harm you as much as your own thoughts." Your own thoughts. And the self-fulfilling prophecy. This is big in law enforcement. I see examples in the law enforcement community all the time. I'm driving my police car, violation in front of me. I'm getting ready to pull it over. I'm thinking, maybe just by the way that driver looks, all of a sudden I'm forming an opinion. This person doesn't like the cops. I better be on my guard. So I approach the car with my hand on my gun. Driver in the car is looking in the mirror going, here's another hard-ass cop. So when those two attitudes meet, because of what we believed about each other, we can either have conflict or this can be an informative encounter between a public safety professional and a citizen driver. And I've seen it all the time where we have a belief about others that's based on our own bias and our own worldview. That's what I love about the outward mindset here on our campus. Through the outward mindset, how do I see my colleagues? How do I see my students? How do I see the visitors on this campus? And am I willing to believe first that they're a genuine person deserving of my kindness and my civility and my respect? Or do I judge them based on a worldview that says, that person's got really long hair. They must be a hippie. Thatcher, when I was younger, my hair was all the way down on my shoulder blades. I burnt them all. Yeah. I started losing my hair really young because kids, Anyway, that's the self-fulfilling prophecy. We have to watch for that, right? What do you believe about others? What are you willing to believe about others? Do we give others the benefit of the doubt? Or do we start with how we're feeling that day? Do we start with, I'm having a bad day, leave me the hell alone, kind of an attitude? We have to be mindful of that. The other thing we have to consider in our mind and how our mind works is the placebo effect, right? And the reason I use this example out of 1978 is because it talked about people had their wisdom teeth removed. That is painful. Yeah, dentists are painful people. They torture us, right? But they were given, some of the people in this research were given morphine. Others were given a placebo that had no medical pain-killing value at all. But their mind told them it did. And they felt no pain. They felt the relief that the placebo gave them because their mind told them to. We have power in our minds. We have power in our thoughts. And it's amazing when we can capture into it. One of the other things that's always captivated me is individuals that describe an out-of-body experience. How does our mind separate and our thoughts separate from our physical body? There was a lady by the name of Deanna Monk that I worked with. She would present at domestic violence fatality review conferences that we were teaching on. Her ex-husband, after she had split up for many, many months, came over to the house and she was visiting with another man. He came in with a gun. He confronted him. He was able to shoot and kill the man, but Dina was able to run out of the house. As she's running out of the house, she heard the gunshot where he had ended up committing suicide. But as she leaves the garage out onto the street, she then sees herself from above running. And it's like, how does that happen? How can the mind transport a vision that is no longer within our physical body? There's so much about our minds that we don't know yet, but we're learning how powerful our minds actually are. All right, there's another concept to visualization, and that's the mantra. How many of you practice with a mantra? Do you have a mantra that you use? Okay, several of you, thank you. Mantras have been used for thousands of years. Tribal rituals, religious organizations and faiths all have some type of a mantra involved. And the Sanskrit is the sacred language of Hinduism that's mentioned in this slide, the language of classical Hindu philosophy and of historical texts of Buddhism and Jainism. And in the simplest form, it's a tool. A mantra is a tool used by each of us to focus our minds. It's a sacred utterance, but the ability of it being sacred can be yours. It doesn't have to be tied to a religion. It can be something that's meaningful to you, something that you want, something that, one of the things, because I present, and I'll be presenting in Reno tomorrow, I'm telling myself, my presentations are well received. And part of the reasons I'm saying that about Reno is because I haven't went through the material a lot yet. But it's a word or phrase used in a repetitive manner. How many of you have ever been nervous about presenting in front of a group? Yeah, we all have, right? And some of that is because maybe we don't feel as we're prepared as we should be. But you present well. Brandon and I had our 3 interns talk to a group of 140 people last night at the Holocaust event. And I know those girls, Shelley was telling me, those girls were nervous. They all got up and did so well. They all had practice. They were ready. And whether their bodies were telling them you're ready or not, in their minds, they were successful. And they saw that. So those are the 3 simple things. It's a tool you can use to focus. And I want to share a quick video about this with you. So we're a work in progress, right? We strive for that perfection in our personal lives. And we allow that perfection also, not in a narcissistic way, but we see ourselves in a positive light, that we can rise up to meet the challenges, and challenges are going to come, right? One of the things, you combine the effort of belief and the will to believe with the impact that can have on your physical body. That doesn't mean things like you don't take medicine, but think about the combination of the medicine and your power to believe and the impact that can have on the healing in our bodies. And we've heard stories all over about people that believed for their health and they recovered. So it can happen through the power, but that doesn't mean that we don't use some of the tools available to us in society. So many, many things we can accomplish when we choose to believe. And when, this touches on the whole idea of quantum physics, and I'm certainly not one that can sit here and tell you I can teach quantum physics. But one of the simplest things about quantum physics is they talk about and believe matter has a frequency, that all matter communicates through a frequency throughout the universe. And what are we made up of? We are made up of matter. And we're connected throughout the universe in that way. And how do we communicate with the universe? The intensity of our thoughts. And how do you gauge the intensity of your thoughts? Is by the emotion you're feeling at the moment. I've got an example that I use to change my thoughts, because negative thoughts come, right? You might get a phone call that's upsetting, or you might get, my granddaughter was in an accident recently, and that phone call certainly raised concerns. So those things come, but how do we not allow those to dominate what's going on in our lives? A couple things about mindfulness, and I'd like to share these with you from a book out of National Geographic called Everyday Mindfulness. These are things that we can practice in our own lives. And it talks about the qualities. There's 10 qualities this book talks about. One is awareness. Awareness arises when you are alert and awake to whatever is in the moment-to-moment flow of your immediate experience. When you are present, you are aware. So things happen throughout the day. Like poor Barrett. Hey, Barrett, I got another emergency. Barrett works in TELUS, right? And I can call him on an instant and say, hey, I need you to fix something. And he's there, he's aware, he's in the moment. The beginner's mind, seeing things as if for the first time, with openness, receptivity, and curiosity. Seeing with fresh eyes can bring back a sense of wonder and awe to people, situations, and moments that have become ordinary, which then invites gratitude and joy. And we'll talk about the power of gratitude here in just a bit. Acceptance is the capacity and willingness to see things as they really are. Oh, we see things through the lens of bias. We see things through the lens of judgment too many times. You know, we like to think of ourselves, oh, we're neutral fact finders. You are not a neutral fact finder if you don't know your own hidden bias. You have to be aware of that. Insight, in the aha moment of clarity, mindful awareness helps you see cause and effect in everything you do and helps you develop wisdom about how things work. Impertinence reminds us that nothing stays as it is in nature, weather, our bodies, emotions, political systems, family dynamics. Connect, savor, and enjoy your life as it was and as it is in each moment. Equanimity is being aware of whatever is happening without being swept away by it. How many of us have experienced something so horrific that it basically takes us out of the game? We just don't know how to handle it, you know. And by developing equanimity, we can not be swept away by those things, good or bad. When you cultivate equanimity, if I'm not pronouncing that right, I apologize. Life's everyday problems won't rock you and overwhelm you as much. Interconnection, the recognition that we are dependent on each other. Suzanne, I know exactly how dependent I am on you for administrative support in my program. I honestly don't mean to harass you on a daily basis, but you are so good at what you do. An awareness of how we affect our habitat and those around us. Wow, we have an impact on each other. Is that impact positive or is it negative? What are we interested in? Compassion, attending to the experience and suffering with the wish to alleviate it. There's some hard cases out there. People out there that could use our help. They could use maybe just a pat on the back or just a kind word. What would serve best here? Gratitude comes from directing attention to what is good with appreciation for it. Gratitude generates the sense of I have enough, a springboard for generosity. And joy is the deep sense of well-being infused with delight. Mindfulness helps you recognize what brings you joy and what blocks it. What brings you joy? And what are those things in your life that may tend to block it? One simple exercise we can do is loving kindness meditation. For those of you that practice breathing, this is a part of that. Somehow when we focus on breathing, we take in the sense of what is happening in our bodies. We can become aware. And then while you're doing the mindful breathing, bring to mind somebody beloved in your life. Now direct through your thoughts and your energy and your frequency kindness to that individual. Then expand that circle and extend that kindness to others within your circle. And then finally, extend that kindness and that love to yourself. And notice in this exercise, you think of others first. Others are first. One of the things I practice when a negative thought tries to come to mind, one of the things that can help me is when I think of my dog Harley. He is a hoot. So I've got pictures of Harley on my phone more than my grandkids. I love my grandkids, I really do. But all it takes for me to smile and change an energy around me is to pull up one of these videos. And I've got several. He gets so dirty that when I bring him home, of course, he has to have a bath. But and we read recently from a veterinarian's viewpoint of why do dogs do that? And I always thought, well, he's kind of happy. He's just having a joyful moment. And they said, no, it's probably more like his back is itchy and he's just scratching his back. But I can watch one of those videos and it just makes me smile. It changes the energy around me just from taking a moment to refocus. And all of us should have those kind of tools available to us if we are in need of refocusing. Now, a couple of the powers that are out there that you need to be mindful of is gratitude and thankfulness. These are the turbochargers of the law of attraction. And how many of us, and we can do this when we first start our day. Do we start off from a point of gratitude and thankfulness? And so, depending on how well you slept the night before, and Harley sleeps in my bed, and sometimes he gets right up next to me. He weighs 90 pounds. And if he's pushing me off the bed, it's like, Harley, I'm not sleeping well here. But I'm grateful for him. I thank the universe that I have such a loving animal and such a loving family. I've got a house. I got a truck. I got coworkers that I deeply love and respect. That I work at a campus that is beautiful. I have the support as a professional. I'm grateful for so many things in my life. And if I will think about that on a daily basis and remind myself and be thankful for it, now I'm putting the law of attraction back to work. What am I pulling into my life? What is the frequency I'm sending out into the universe? And what returns to me? And my whole career has benefited from that type of positive energy going out. I can go back and look at the different stages in my life of how I got where I'm at, and it all started with a positive belief that this is where I'm going. And it works. It's powerful and it works. Practice gratitude, practice thankfulness. I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about scriptures. In the Bible, it talks about whatever you ask for in prayer, believing you have received it, and it's yours. All things are possible to him who believes. And as a man thinks in his heart, so is he. Remember the visualization? Who do you see yourself to be? And I'm not talking about physical appearance. I'm talking about who you are as a being, as a member of the human race. And, thank God for the diversity we as a world have. I've come to really appreciate the fact that there's other people out there that don't look like me. I get to go to Vietnam here in May. I can't wait to be around those lovely people. They're kind, gentle, giving people. And I don't dare tell them my dad was there in 67 as a soldier fighting in that country. And then again, the quote from Buddha, we are a result of what we have thought. Some inventors, some people that also were well aware of the power of our thinking and our mind. Excuse me. Alexander Graham Bell, he recognized this power, even though he didn't quite totally understand it. But think about what he invented. The ability to communicate across airways. My colleague in Vietnam, we do WhatsApp. I can send a message in WhatsApp 6,000 miles over the Pacific Ocean and within minutes get a response back. I have no clue how that works, but it does. There's energy all around us all the time, and we can tap into it. Albert Einstein, another inventor, he also talked about the imagination is everything. It's the preview of life's coming attractions. What your dominant thoughts are now is what your life may be in the future. What is consistently dominating your thinking will, through the law of attraction, bring it into being, into your life. He also said, quantum mechanics should allow two objects to affect each other's behavior instantly over vast distances. And I thought, oh my God, I can communicate with a colleague 6,000 miles away instantly. How does that work? I have no clue other than these frequencies that exist throughout our universe. Dr. Denis Waitley, in some of his quotes, visualization, think and speak well of your health. You know, and I recognize that when we're not feeling well, it is very easy to go down that negative path like, oh man, I feel like crap. Or, you know, you want to tell somebody, right? And, you know, we have to guard against that. Speak what you want, not what you have. It's not what you are that holds you back. It's what you think you are not. Relentless, repetitive self-talk is what changes our self-image. What the mind dwells upon, the body acts upon. Life is a do-it-yourself project. I've got one last video to show you, and then I'll be more than happy to open the floor up for any discussion anybody wants to have. All right, well, thank you all for listening to me ramble on. I am certainly not an expert in this arena. I just know what has worked and what I'm reading, and it makes sense to me. There's well-researched information in this that I'm certain is available to everybody in the library. But, you know, years ago, I would listen to news coming into work. I quit doing that. We can make a difference individually. And what I love about our campus is we make a difference collectively in how we're impacting other lives and just in general, society in general. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions about the presentation or hear any comments anybody wants to add. It sounds like several of you practice some of these principles we've talked about. So.
I was going to say, I visualize Thatcher's hair, but it doesn't happen for me, so.
Yeah. I tried to visualize. Did you guys see Professor Winters? He cut his hair. Oh. Yeah, it was like, who is that? It's Andrew. Yeah. Well, thank you guys so much for coming. Thank you for participating.
Thank you, Jerald.
Heavy topic on the front end, hopefully a little lighter on the back end.